That's
sensitive.
I don't think so either. Yeah, it's okay. Welcome back to the Convo Couch, ladies and gentlemen. I am Pastor Jardula. So today we're going to talk about taxes, trades, and tariffs. Joining me today is a candidate. He was just a candidate for Congress down in Orange County, and I call him the finance guy. When I first met this guy, I heard him utter the words, "The economy is rigged, the economy is rigged, the economy is rigged." Ladies and gentlemen, look at Kevin Kensinger.
I was born and raised in Southern California. Growing up, my mom was a 27-year career probation officer. And I am married to a third-generation public school teacher. My son was born breech and his left lung collapsed, so he was put on a ventilator. It was the worst 9 days of my life, by far. Bills never once crossed our mind. Without insurance, on paper, all the procedures and NICU stay would have been $160,000. No one should have to pay $160,000 to get their child. In July of 2008, I left law school with $100,000 in debt. And by that fall, the economy began collapsing as we started the Great Recession. For the next 2 years, I worked any job I could get. I was working 15 hours a day, 6 days a week, with no health insurance, no 401k, and no job security. What bothers me is that so many people are still living that way when they don't have to be. I know exactly how rigged the system is. I definitely drew inspiration from my mother to make a difference, to help people that need help. I'm running as an independent in the 48th because it was the most honest thing I could think to do. I see how broken the system is, and I don't see enough people willing to fix it. I couldn't find the candidate that I wanted to vote for, and I couldn't find the candidate that I wanted to volunteer for. So I decided to become one. My name is Kevin Kensinger. I'm running because we have things to do.
Kevin Kensinger, the finance guy, in the studio with today. How you doing today, Kevin?
Doing well, sir. How are you?
Awesome. Thank you for coming on out and doing this with us.
Oh, I'm excited.
I couldn't wait to get together because, I call you the finance guy because you know so much about finance. You work in finance.
Yes.
And you know a lot about trade as well. And these are some subjects they're kind of deep. There's a lot of rabbit holes to go down into. But I hope that you can unpack some of it today. Let's talk about taxes right off the bat. Let's unpack it back to, I've heard you say before, Reagan. Those were some of the deepest tax cuts and the deepest wounds to the American worker. Can you unpack that?
Oh, yeah. So let's just dive straight into trickle-down economics, supply-side economics. You heard it referred to a couple different ways, but it's all the same thing. It's the idea that you give the job creators all the money, and it will naturally trickle down. It sounds lovely in a vacuum, right? You hear the cliches from the right. My daddy said he never got a job from a poor man.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I mean, that makes sense, of course. So we should economically give all the money to the top, and they will create the jobs. But we now have over 30 years of data, right? So the Reagan tax cuts that we're really talking about happened in 86, effectively.
Well, those were the second tax cuts, right? The first ones happened in 81 where he essentially went from 70% to the 1% for the 1%, the uber rich, to 50%, and then I believe in 86 he went from 50% all the way down to 24%, which is almost like a 46%. I can't do the math off the top of my head. 46% tax decrease for the uber rich. Am I right?
Correct. So that's why I always jump off from 86 because, to be honest, if you look back at historical norms, they tiptoed in 81 to 50. So that's why, to get an understanding of how demonstrably they changed the economy from that tax structure, from a macroeconomic level, we need to go one step back to the height of the middle class, right? From post-World War II to the 80s, where unions were strong and Americans fought for 5-day work weeks and Social Security and the New Deal after the Depression, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when you look back at historical norms for those tax brackets, the top percentages at certain points in time were 90%.
Yeah.
Like once you made over
during
that
FDR,
breakpoint,
right?
it was, I mean, even beyond. I mean, people are always shocked to see the 60s and 70s. There's a big PDF that I keep on my phone to show people that Stanford had put out at one point, adjusted for inflation, what the tax brackets would look like throughout time. And people would be blown away to see over 400K, over 250K, you know, blah, 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 blah. This is what I'm paying. Oh my God, how dare you? That's highway robbery. Because Clinton fought for it to get all the way back up to 39.5, 39.6%, something like that. So we need to understand how far down we came the ladder in 86 and how much we fought to get back to what is nowhere near close to what the height of the middle class was.
Yes.
So just starting there. Then we can see post 86 that none of what supply side economics promised happened.
Yeah.
Right? We've seen businesses consolidate and grow. We've seen the stock market do very, very well. We've seen the top 1% do very well. We've seen the wealth inequality perpetuate. We don't need to jump into that. I think everybody's pretty well educated on the fact that the richest and the have-nots have further deviated.
I think it's just the closest it's been to modern times, to like when it was like ancient Egypt, as far as the disparity between the rich and the poor. It feels like, I mean, it's just such a big gap. So
I mean, we used to look at India and the other places with gross inequality and say, oh my goodness, but as they continue to rank inequality, the U.S. continues to unfortunately climb the ladder internationally of inequality. So I mean, that's not something to be proud of in any way, shape, or form. When it's absolutely silly given the size of our economic power. I mean, we're about a $19 trillion annual GDP.
Something like that.
I'd have to double check, but I think the next closest, you'd have to aggregate the EU to even get close. But you're still in like the $11 trillion ballpark. And you fall off from there, where in the top 5, I think you're already down to a couple trillion. So that's how much bigger we are economically. So we have the tools available. Don't let anybody tell you, as we continue to argue macroeconomic stuff in the current political climate, well, we can't afford to pay for it. I mean, yes, we can. We're just choosing not to.
Before we jump into you can't afford to pay for it, because you know, I looked the other day, I saw, I believe it was the, I don't know if it was the Hill or wherever it was, but it talked about the Progressive Caucus, which is a minority, inside Congress. I believe there's 59 members in the House, one senator, and Bernie Sanders that has 60 members. But they presented their own bill, and it went right at that Pentagon defense budget, where 51 cents on every tax dollar, I think, goes to. So I know we do have the money. It's just where we're allocating it. But let's get back to what you said about Reagan and Clinton. Reagan obviously was a deep wound. Bill Clinton, you said he fought to get that tax rate up to almost 39%. However, he did repeal Glass-Steagall.
Oh, he did a whole bunch of things that sold us out.
Because you talk about the economy is rigged, the economy is rigged, the economy is rigged. Wasn't the repeal of Glass-Steagall another big knife in the side of the workers? And can you explain a little bit more about it?
Getting into the specifics of Glass-Steagall is just unnecessary, because whether we reinstate it or do a new version of it, or we Dodd-Frank, or we, you know, whatever, it's all really about having checks and balances on financial institutions. And in the modern era, that really means too big to fail. And if you have banking institutions that are playing with the roulette wheel on the stock market that then lose your money, right, that's going to be to the detriment of everyone. I mean, I'm just trying to state, and I don't want to get into the specifics, that it was a pretty bad, I mean, it was part of the economy continuing to be rigged. Correct.
You know,
so this is one thing we were talking about off air before we got started, was really in a post-Reagan, pre-Reagan breakdown of kind of what the government's role in the economic environment has been. That's really the way I break it down, because you can split hairs between Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, but they were all the same corporate centrists from a macroeconomic standpoint. Right. And there are different arguments as to why each individual did or didn't do certain things. But yeah, on the economic front, Clinton, in his eyes, I think, and in a lot of ours on the left at the time, thought he was compromising, right, in a bipartisan manner. because he also reduced capital gains, which I'm not necessarily against. We can get into why, but it doesn't matter. But it is less revenue, and it does help the top 1%, right? If they can pay less taxes on their investments.
Yeah. It's kind of, he went like, he just kind of like tilted stuff. It's all right.
Right.
Less in capital gains, but more over here.
Right. Looking back, I'm still not sure where the over here was. We can argue that too, because on the social front, there was a whole bunch of other stuff that we got sold on up the river on, whether it was welfare reform or DOMA or Don't Ask, Don't Tell or all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah.
So still trying to figure out where that compromise came in. But point being, we need to fundamentally alter the economic landscape for the middle class again. And so the cynic in me gets very, very worried about a lot of the consolidated money and power in this current environment. The optimist in me is very encouraged by history's lessons, because all we really need to do is the same things that we've done historically, right? We need to break up some of the big companies, either willingly or unwillingly. Some of them already are, because they're understanding that them being too big to fail is not ideal. But we got to keep an eye on them as they do that. We can come back to that because I have an example. But more than anything, I think for us, the masses, to accomplish any of this, yes, it's voting in legislators that will do what we want, but more than anything, it's unions, and more than anything, it's having a voice, constant and thorough, that we need corporate-free candidates. Because if we want to get money out of politics, which is, this is all tied in economically. I always separate the government and the economy, but this is, if we're going to fundamentally change either, it's the money in politics. And you've heard me say before, if we want to end Citizens United, there's only 3 avenues. The Supreme Court needs to overrule itself, which we just
it's not happening now.
Just took a big step backwards on that one. Legislation would have to write new laws, campaign finance reform. How confident are we that that's happening?
Not really that confident.
And then door number 3 is us, right? We need to support corporate-free candidates that don't owe favors to those corporations, so that they become the legislators that will no longer write a bill that was canned for them by the NRA or ALEC, right? So we're already off on a tangent that's not the economy, but you know what I'm saying.
I know what you mean. What I'm trying to say is, if you got into office today, let's say, just for argument's sake, you became the president, financially, what would be your first move as president to start unrigging this economy? I mean, what can you do right off the bat? Would it be breaking up the banks? Would it be auditing the Fed? I mean, what would you do? What's the first thing we need to do when you say us, legislation-wise?
The money in politics has to be number 1.
So it's all about Citizens United. And that's the first thing. Boom. Because we obviously want to stop the bleeding and stop the cutting that's caused these problems and whatnot. We don't want that cancer to come back into our system.
Well, let me just take a step back on the question, because as president, right, you're not king. There's only so much you can do executive order. The Fed doesn't even necessarily do what you want them to do, for better or for worse. Even though you appoint those people, you don't.
That's what I'm saying. And you could appoint somebody differently to the Fed right off. You can put your person into the Fed right away. Would that be the first big step?
It depends on what the Fed's up to. I mean, the Fed is not.
Has the Fed ever been up to anything good? It seems like they've always been up to no good.
If you want to go back to Jefferson and argue a central bank, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't want to go that far back. I'm talking
in our time. But so look, under Obama and the recession, it was a hot topic on the right and left what the Fed should do, and to this day, what they should be doing. Do they keep rates low? Do they increase rates? What do they look at? Is it unemployment or underemployment, or who's falling off the labor force? And what indicators are we looking at? And how much does the European market and the global economy affect whether or not we put our foot on the gas? Because we can rock that boat to a detriment of ourselves. You know what I mean? So losing sleep over the Fed is not really something I do, because they can only move 1 or 2 big levers. And yes, they're big levers, but I would rather see us, the citizenry, take control through modern day boycotts, which we could easily do with social media, through modern day shareholder divestments, which some universities already are, right? Where we have an opportunity to vote every day with our dollars. So you know I'm a capitalist, right? I'm not a socialist or a communist. I'm a capitalist. On the governmental side, I think the government has a duty to provide a social safety net. But sticking to the economy, when you talk about capitalism, it's an ecosystem. It should be healthy at every level of the food chain. Right now, we have apex predators running around
Yeah.
Wild.
Like crazy.
Uncontrolled.
Yes. Unchecked.
Eating us little people.
Yes. It seems to be, if there's any way you can make money on anything, it's going to be done. I mean, they're making profits off caging people right now. So, I mean, it's...
Unfortunately, yes. Absolutely, yeah.
It's so... Let me get back to this one other question, because you were talking about the Fed. And I don't want to lose sleep over the Fed, but I remember Obama campaigning on a national bank. What about a national bank? What about
public bank?
A public bank, excuse me. We have public banking on the...
Big fan.
Yeah. So if we started a public bank and just bypassed the Fed, wouldn't that be the best thing to do? I mean, are we completely dependent on the Fed?
The irony of a national public bank would be that it'd either be joined at the hip or run by the Fed. I mean, right? Because that's who's got the purse strings. So look, if I could right now snap my fingers and there's a national public bank available to the middle class, the easiest way to tie the institution's feet to the fire is to say that Johnny on the street gets the same institutional rate for lending as the big boys.
Gotcha.
Because what's been happening since the recession is the big boys have been borrowing at near zero.
Yes. And not lending it out.
Buying
their own stock.
Buying their own stock.
Using it to lobby against the person who gave it to them.
Correct.
It's just like,
So we have subsequently lost our access to capital. It's gotten harder for us to borrow. Even though we can get lower interest rates, whoop-de-doo, right? Our wages, we don't have surplus wages to pay off the interest rates even when they're low. So that's you know, the whole can of beeswax. So that would be something that you could do if you could snap your fingers on a national public bank overnight. What I would like to see, the states' rights guy in me, is something we could do here in California far and away.
Public banking.
Is a public bank at the state level where we have almost 40 million people and almost a $40 million, or excuse me, I don't know what our economy is right now. It's 5th largest in the world. I forget what the total dollar amount is. But with 38 million people, we'd be our own big bank. And give people the opportunity to, and this is where, again, the capitalist in me becomes the optimist, where if we provided microfinance for that urban garden, right? If we provided some small business loans to that person with a new online business, and gave the middle class an opportunity. This is what we did, again, in the 40s, 50s. We gave money to the little guy so they could go start businesses, and a lot of those businesses became the behemoths that they are now. But let's do that. Let's invest in us again.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of Obama gets a lot of criticism because he bailed out Wall Street when a lot of people said, don't give that money to Wall Street, just give it to the people. Give it to Main Street. Put it in their hands. I know kind of George Bush Jr. started that little stimulus. We had a little check in the mail.
$300 check in the mail.
I got a $300 check in the mail. But I went out and spent it. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of criticism there. And like you said, we got to get this money lent back out to the people. We got to get it put into people's hands. That's why when it comes to when we talk about trade in the second segment, we can talk about that as far as jobs maybe coming back or whatnot. So let's wrap up this tax cuts. Let's talk about Trump real quick. You remember the picture of Donald Trump out there smiling with the tax cuts? He had all his cronies, his congressmen behind him, and they were celebrating and smiling. But to the everyday person who saw these tax cuts to the top 1%, it felt like more of the same. Reaganomics. It doesn't work. And since when is deficit spending, in line with the Republican Party? Can you unpack some of this?
Yes. So here's what I can tell you first and foremost. You're going to beat your head against that wall for the better part of a decade, because it's been about 15 years of me doing that, where I call it the shame mirror. Right? You want to look at a conservative and hold up a mirror and say, your Reaganism didn't work, this didn't work, that didn't work, and bombard them with facts, right? And I always use the example of global warming, right?
Your uncle, I love that.
You can't throw a science fact at him that suddenly he's going to be like, oh, you're right. Oh, my God, we are responsible. Let's lower emissions immediately. Like, he's heard it all. It's not persuasive. So my biggest beef is we've lost the narrative on the economy, where Johnny on the street does think that these corporate tax cuts are beneficial. The moderates, the swing voters, they think that the supply side economics works because mentally in a vacuum it makes sense, right? And the left has done such a poor job of defining what their economic narrative is that no one knows it. What is it? What does the Johnny on the street know of the economic theory besides trickle down and supply side? It's literally the only thing we've all been indoctrinated with. So I'm just going to pause real quick that it's not just the right or the middle, but even some leftists that do think, well, if you give the corporations more money, I mean, Apple handed out $1,000. It was lovely.
No,
right? Same
those
way,
were the headlines right away. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
That breadcrumb.
Yeah.
They threw us a breadcrumb.
The $2,000 a year that I'll save, and that's the thing, $2,000 a year is not going to help me out. I need more wages. I don't need you to let me keep more of the little money I have. I need more of that money, then let me keep it.
So, and you've heard me say a million times, median household income, which is mom and dad's income, you know, both the whole household across this country is $60,000.
Yep.
And here in California, it's $70,000.
And that's with dad having 2 jobs and doing
that's
Uber.
With everybody doing everything
Uber
they can.
in between. So it's technically 3 jobs,
right.
you know what I'm saying, to get that.
So you will see some people on the right say, well, adjusted for inflation, wages have risen slightly. And they'll point to a couple of percentage points.
Yeah.
But like,
I mean, ridiculous. Small.
But you look at the cost of living that our prior generations didn't have, right? Yeah. College, healthcare, all these things that we are paying for in real time, that subsequently now 3 out of 4 Americans or more are living paycheck to paycheck. So yeah, to your point, there are no extra wages for me to invest in the stock market, even if I could. There are no extra wages for me to take care of this or that. We're all a car accident or, you know, losing a job away from bankruptcy. Or, you know, worse.
I think it's like something like 60% of all households don't have $1,000 in the bank or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
It's something ridiculous. And it's that, like you said, that's a car accident away from being on the street. And the homeless population has shot up like crazy. I mean, there's so many factors to that. But we have not seen our wages rise whatsoever.
So, yeah, to put a bow on the tax cuts, you've seen it time and time again, whether it was 86 or Bush's in 04 or this one currently. We're already getting a nice little data set of about 12 months, couple quarters now of seeing what these banks and these institutions are doing with this money. And like you said before, they're doing stock buybacks.
Yeah.
They're doing stock buybacks because their fiduciary duty as a board of directors, when we talk about these corporations, it's a board of directors. Their legal fiduciary duty as board of directors is to the shareholders.
Yes.
To maximize share value.
Yes.
They could give a rip about anything else. That's their job. That's what they're being compensated and paid to do. So if they have an opportunity to get money that was otherwise free from the government, right, repatriate at 5%, 20%, make up a number. This is what I constantly try to tell people. GE already pays $0.
Yes.
Lowering the corporate tax rate does not increase their wages for their workers or increase employment for their workers.
Yes.
So we can come back to jobs on the next segment, but automation is far and away a greater threat to the American worker than globalist free trade. I mean, the tax structure in and around it, we can talk about, but that's all centered on supply side.
Well, I mean, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment as we talk about trade and what Trump's plan is and what he's trying to do, or trying to figure out what he's doing. You know,
supposes he knows.
Well, I mean, that we'll get into that because nobody's done anything on trade, not any president since, you know, it's been the same rules for 30, 40 years. I think NAFTA was really a big knife in the side. However, you have some avenues and some things you'd like to talk about when it comes to trade. You know a lot about that. We're going to get back on the second segment. In closing, what is going to happen now with these tax cuts as far as deficit spending? Can you explain a little bit about deficit spending?
Yeah, they'll blow a hole in it. So we already know it'll be about $1 trillion and a half. They always forecast increased revenue from their tax cuts. They say it'll pay for itself. That's what you hear, right? So they say, like, we're going to give the money to the top. Once again, supply side, more wages, more spending, more revenue for the government. They'll pay for themselves. Over and over and over. It doesn't happen.
Works.
Doesn't happen. Over and over.
Works.
So now that they've blown a further hole in it, the Freedom Caucus and every other deficit hawk that when it's convenient is a deficit hawk, the rest of the time they're giving the Pentagon more money than they asked for. We'll circle back, and this is Paul Ryan's grand plan, and he's leaving, but don't be mistaken that this is not the Koch brothers and the master plan on the right. They will then say, oh my goodness, look at the debt. We've got to get this under control. We need to cut entitlements.
Yeah.
And that means
entitlements.
Social Security.
Don't we put money into that? Is that really an entitlement?
Social Security. Well, that's again where we've lost the narrative for the last 30 years on the left, is we've all allowed Social Security and Medicare to be referred to as entitlements. Everybody thinks welfare queen, right? There's enough YouTube videos of some welfare recipient talking about getting money from the government that they feel emboldened that they can paint with a broad brushstroke.
Yeah.
But the reality is we have 10,000 people a day in this country turning 65.
Yeah.
The baby boomers are not going to stop retiring, dropping off the labor force. And guess what? They're all on fixed incomes.
Yeah.
Where they're ending their careers with the same crappy wages the rest of us are. That's why you're seeing them as seasonal help in the Nordstroms and the Macy's and the Starbucks.
Yep.
Because their Social Security and their Medicare is not enough.
Yeah.
So when these hawks on the deficit circle back and say, oh, we got to cut these things or we got to privatize ABC, privatize means put it on the stock market.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you want your Medicare, your Medicaid, or your Social Security riding on the stock market.
Well, nobody's raising their hands in this studio. I'll tell you that much.
Oh wait, we need to expand those programs.
Well, listen, let's get into we're going to get into trade after a quick commercial break. Going about what you said, like you see all these videos on YouTube with somebody taking advantage of the system, whatnot. I'm going to go see the Wu-Tang on Friday night and a little ode to ODB, but I wish he would have never ever put that food stamps little bit when he was taking money from food stamps as a member of the Wu-Tang clan, and he's going to buy. He was actually robbing and taking advantage of the system. It was funny, but I wish it was never out there because it just painted a bad picture.
I agree, but if we all looked to ODB for life advice, right? He's not a role model necessarily, or wasn't
a role model.
He's a good rapper though.
Yes,
so, right.
Great music, Wu-Tang. We're gonna take a commercial break, and we'll be back with Kevin Kensinger, the finance guy, to talk a little bit more about trade on the Convo Couch.
My algebra test.
What was it?
Algebra.
Yeah.
New York is my home.
How you doing?
I've never lived anywhere else.
Yeah.
When I grew up here, it was just my mom and me in a one-bedroom, fifth-floor walk-up. New York is where I was raised and where I'm raising my kids. I'm a proud public school graduate and a prouder public school parent. I was given chances I just don't see from most of New York's kids today. Our leaders are letting us down. We are now the most unequal state in the entire country, with both incredible wealth and extreme poverty. Half the kids in our upstate cities live below the poverty line. How did we let this happen? I love New York. I've never wanted to live anywhere else, but something has to change. We want our government to work again on health care, ending mass incarceration, fixing our broken subway. We are sick of politicians who care more about headlines and power than they do about us.
It can't just be business as usual anymore. If we're going to get at the root problem of inequity, we have to turn the system upside down. We have to go out ourselves and seize it. This is a time to stick our necks out, to remember where we came from. This is a time to be visible. This is a time to fight.
I'm Cynthia Nixon. I'm a New Yorker. And together, we can win this fight.
Next up, Albany.
We are back at the Convo Couch with the finance guy. Kevin Kensinger's here, ladies and gentlemen. I know I always speak too loud, get all crazy. I like to do that when he's in there. I introduced him on a barn burner and just got him all hyped before he went on stage. It was like I was introducing one of the members of the Wu-Tang clan.
Yeah.
Talking about the Wu-Tang
I told you we got to take you on the road and have you introduce me everywhere I go. Yeah.
Next election, 2020, we'll get that done.
Dude.
Let's talk about trade, Kevin, because I'm not a big trade guy. I don't understand everything about it. I know a little bit about it. I've been paying somewhat attention. And what's been going right now, crazy, in China, more than over here, from what I see, is news about the trade wars and what's going on. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and we'll unpack this, because I believe that you're not a big fan of tariffs, are you?
No.
You're not?
No.
Okay. Some people are a fan of tariffs, and from what I know about the trade market is that the trade laws is that they've been the same for 30, 40 years, pretty much, whatnot. And not one president has really come on there and tried to change a lot of them. And we obviously have NAFTA, but what I see here in Trump, because I don't have deranged Trump syndrome, you know, is I see him. This is the area where I think this is why he won the election.
His value add.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, the fact that he understands what's going on, I don't know what his master plan is. I'm not going to try to get in that mind. But the way he's been approaching this, and we've seen this for years, we've heard Trump say, it's China. China's getting at us. But China imports $5 billion worth of goods every year to our $1 billion we import to them.
Imports or exports?
Import. They import $5 billion worth of goods. In other words, they're a lot more dependent on us than we are of them.
We buy more of their stuff.
Exactly.
So they export.
I'm sorry. We import their goods.
Yeah.
China exports $5 billion worth of goods.
So that's the trade imbalance. Is a 5 to 1.
5 to 1. Okay.
Fair enough.
So when Trump starts this war with slapping tariffs, and we'll talk about where he slapped the tariffs on in a little bit. But first, I want you to talk about why you don't like a tariff. He understands, I think, that we have a little bit more. We have a little bit more bullets in the holster. We have a little bit more weapons to use. We can outlast their a trade war with them. They're more dependent on us, are they not?
They are more dependent on us right now.
Yes.
They understand long term and have for the last 12, 15 years that they need to diversify because we are their primary customer.
Yes.
Can I circle back to the 5 to 1 ratio?
Go ahead.
The trade imbalance?
Please.
Why do you think that's bad?
I don't think it's bad. I just think that they're a little bit more dependent on us than we are dependent on them, that therefore we can outlast this trade war.
Right. But to your point, we hold all the cards.
Yes.
So why do we need tariffs?
Well, I think his master plan is, and I don't want to, once again, I don't know, I can't see anything. First of all, it's an unbalanced sheet. I think he's ripping up the playing board and saying, let's start over from scratch. Let's figure out something. Let's get some talks on the table, because you have all these global trade organizations that have unbalanced the scale and lean towards China, and our American workers, manufacturing just disappeared.
So let's pause there. You're conceptualizing global economy on this like monopoly board where there's like a few consolidated trade treaties that govern everything. That's not true.
Okay.
I don't have numbers. The percentage of any of the governing bodies that we're talking about relative to global commerce is probably relatively low. If you were to aggregate them all, relative to the, World Bank and everything else, like, sure, there are big entities.
Yes.
Big trade deals, big national agreements.
Yes.
But what they really do is create a framework for business to happen inside of.
Okay.
So an individual business still has a very real peer-to-peer contract. So most of the global economy, or what we've been raised to hear as free trade, is just business-to-business conduct like anything else. And the idea around it, again, capitalism, is that the market will find the most efficient prices and goods if you allow us to trade freely with Latin America, with Asia, with Europe, with everybody else. Because let's use avocados as an example, since us millennials just can't get enough avocado toast.
You love this avocado toast.
It's lovely that we can grow avocados here in America, but we only, even on the southern border, get one growing season, maybe two, depending on the varietal. Down in Latin America, right, different hemispheres, we can get year-round fruits and veggies. That's how we do it.
Yeah.
Why is that a bad thing, right? So let's start there, and then let's go back to, do you like big government or little government?
I mean, I like medium government.
Medium government.
I like medium government. I believe the government has certain responsibilities.
Right.
I don't want to impact that.
Do you want to give the government more power or less power? Current government. Our current government.
This current government.
No, not just this administration. Our current government.
I want to give them less powers on war. I'm going to give them more powers on social safety nets.
Okay. All right.
I don't want them
These aren't entirely fair questions. I'm just trying to lay the groundwork a little bit. All right. So when you get hip to the idea that the government's going to use tariffs as a bargaining chip or a negotiating mechanism, again, being a student of history, you don't have to postulate what that would look like. We've done it. It's it's national economic isolationism.
Yeah.
It's the idea that we're going to kind of pull everything back within our borders and be more self-sufficient.
Yes.
And it'll be better for our employees.
It won't.
Et cetera, et cetera. Well, let's take a a break right there, because yeah, if you did that right now and snapped your fingers, the price of everything would go up overnight.
Yes.
Do you have disposable wages?
No.
Could you afford for everything in your life to go up in price?
Well, that's
Yes
that's
or no?
the argument.
Yes or no?
No, not right now. I don't.
Absolutely not.
No.
Where do you think those costs are going to go? They're going to get passed on.
Yeah, I hear you.
To the consumer.
Yeah.
That shareholder, that board of directors, right?
Yeah.
They are not going to eat that cost. That tariff that just became overhead for them to bring goods in and out of the country, or to switch to domestic production, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to cost money, and they're not going to front that. So you are going to directly pass that on to the middle class.
I hear you. I mean, but that's the argument that the wages aren't up right now.
Right.
I mean, let's be honest. The oligarchs need us, and I think they understand that we need to have the finances to buy the goods and services that are, made. Otherwise, the whole system shuts down.
Right.
And I think there's an argument to be made that, okay, hey, listen, inflation, would you rather have wages really low and all the stuff we get really low, the stuff on Walmart that we buy, or would you rather have some form of inflation because wages have to go up? You know what I'm saying? If wages go up and inflation goes up, I don't see that is as bad as things are now, where everything's just down low in price and whatnot.
That'd be a normal maturation.
Yes.
Wages and inflation rise together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen that in over 2 decades here.
Tell me how tariffs do that.
What's that?
Tell me how tariffs do that.
Well, I mean, I think tariffs will do this. Number one, first of all, the Chinese workers now is making what? 60 to 70% of what an American worker makes now? So the whole thought process on cheap labor is starting to disappear. And if you slap tariffs on, for instance, I think Donald Trump has slapped tariffs on a lot of like motors, stuff that's manufacturing, you know what I'm saying? Those sort of things, whatnot. That's going to make the factories that are constantly built in China too expensive, and they're going to have to come home and build factories here if it's going to be cheaper. And that means jobs will come up, wages will go up.
It will be at parity, right? They'll be the same.
Yes.
Okay, the net effect of that is still increased prices on everything for the middle class.
Yes.
Whether you manufacture it there or here.
Yes.
Now, to presuppose that the manufacturing that comes home will increase wages, you got to go that next step. Tell me why those jobs coming home will be good paying jobs.
I just said that I kind of explained before, and once again, it's not snap your fingers and it's going to happen. But to buy the goods and services that are made from the oligarchs that own all these things, they have to have the wages for them to be bought.
Oh, you're talking about them being self-aware enough to pay their own workers a livable wage.
Yes.
They're not interested in that.
No, they want to pay them enough to buy the goods and services that are
not
made
currently.
here.
Walmart has 2/3 of its employees. Don't quote me on how many employees. What percentage?
Yeah,
of
Amazon,
Walmart,
they're awful.
Okay.
They're not like Costco where they actually pay their.
Okay.
No, I hear you.
But even Costco employees, I have friends that have worked for them for decades. No knock on Costco.
Yeah.
But this is again us being satisfied with breadcrumbs. These friends are still a broken leg and some vacation time away from being at risk from losing their job or what have you. You know what I mean? They're still not living on Easy Street.
Yeah.
They're still living paycheck to paycheck. They're still having to miss their kid's recital on a Saturday to cover that shift for double time.
No, I know. I hear you.
Like, this is not, we should not be okay with this bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, well, what do you think the solution is? I mean, I don't know if it's the right way, but I just kind of see Trump doing something a little bit different when it comes to trade. And like we talked about this is in my opinion what got him elected.
Of course.
It's not the people who think that it's all the Trump supporters are a bunch of bigots and racists. Yeah, they have some in there. It's not about the wall, you know what I'm saying? Oh, it's the wall, whatnot. It's the people who got hit in the pocket. He lost in Wisconsin, he lost in Ohio, he lost in Pennsylvania. He lost to all those people who had the NAFTA name stapled onto Hillary Clinton, and that is why they put Trump into office, basically because of these trade deals.
So let's unpack that real quick. He won thanks to 77,000 people in 3 states.
What states were they?
He got the same number of national votes as the last 2 Republican presidents prior to him.
Yeah.
The narrative that he had this massive populist uprising just doesn't mathematically add up because it was the same voter turnout for the party. I would agree with you.
We're talking
61 million.
Yeah, we're talking. That's a lot of people, and I'm just saying a lot of those votes
for sure
came for those people in the Rust Belt who lost those jobs.
I agree with you. So this is totally. I just want to put it in perspective because we always talk about him winning the Rust Belt like it was this massive exodus, and
if Bernie Sanders was running, and I hate to say this, he wouldn't have had a chance in the Rust Belt. Bernie Sanders' pictures on those walls of those labor unions and whatnot. Yeah,
so exactly. So this is going to be my next thought is his success, and I think we would both agree, was a promise to disrupt the status quo.
Yes.
Okay, him and Bernie. Yes. That's what the Rust Belt is looking for. That's what us that are living paycheck to paycheck are looking for, right?
Yes.
That's what people who are seeing their public schools eroded and no health care are looking for, is a disruption of the status quo.
Okay.
So I will freely admit that is appealing and that it's fine.
I think it's more the wallet. I think it was the wallet. You know, these people have lost jobs. I mean, manufacturing jobs. I think we've closed 60,000 factories in the last decade.
Everybody will pick and choose how they see the economy as being rigged.
I think the money is the main thing. Is people, if you can't, you know what I'm saying, we are a capitalist system. And if you don't have enough money to buy, your goods and services for your family and send your kids to school or take a vacation, it's going to affect you hard. And you're going to vote against the status quo,
of course,
which was Hillary Clinton, because I don't think this would be going on trade war wise. If Hillary Clinton was in office, it would have been more the same.
Agreed. So where we're on the same exact page is everybody's looking for a disruption to the status quo.
Yeah.
You and I are. We're here talking about how to disrupt the status quo. So this is where what we're doing today is diving into, are tariffs the answer to disrupt the status quo?
Which is why I had you here to educate
me. Totally.
Because I know you know this stuff.
So this is where I was kind of poking you earlier with big government or little government.
Yeah.
Is in finance you basically call this a market maker, right? You have somebody that's kind of moving levers to determine the market.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, the government unilaterally decides, one branch of the government in particular, that they are going to slap a tariff on a specific industry or a commodity, a good, right? Aluminum, steel. They're playing wizard behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Okay. So you and I don't like big government.
Yeah.
Why are we suddenly a big fan of tariffs, and why do we trust Donald Trump to pull the right levers?
Well, I'm not trusting Donald Trump. It's just breaking the status quo, number one.
But look, burning down the house breaks the status quo. It doesn't mean I don't want to remodel that way.
Yeah, I don't think he's
I need
burning
new
down the house.
countertops. I don't need to burn down my house and hope that I can get the insurance on the back end.
Well, I mean, look where China's slapping their tariffs too, though.
Okay,
you know
they have been very public that they are reactionary, and they're going to remain reactionary. So
Yes.
you'll see them do a 1-for-1. So every time we do a tariff, they will impose a similar on us.
But different
there's
areas,
a reason,
right?
They're trying to.
They're going
areas,
after soybeans, agriculture.
No, they're trying to put their
fish.
foot on our throat, relative, right? It doesn't.
But they're also hitting his area. They understand where they're going in Middle America, where he won a lot of votes too.
The Chinese don't give a rip about Donald Trump's political affluency.
Well, I think they.
No. Stop. Stop. We always have the hubris that we think everyone's looking through the prism that we're concerned with, right?
Yeah.
That everyone's concerned about the corruption within the DNC. They're not. That everyone is concerned about Donald Trump as the king of America. The Chinese are not. The Chinese have and are investing billions and trillions of dollars into Latin American and more specifically African infrastructure, because they know that us being their primary customer is a mess, especially when they get a Donald Trump. They're not here to unseat Donald Trump or do anything else.
No,
they are going to reactionary. Right now, we are still their biggest customer. They don't want to hurt us.
Okay, wait a second. Let me unpack this. Let me ask you this question right now. They know they're going against Donald Trump. China understands that. Donald Trump is I am not convinced that Donald Trump is out there working for the middle class American. I'm convinced more that he's out there working for votes. Like he's always appealing to his base. It's like he has that list that comes out. Everything he said he's going to do, he's trying to do. Okay, and they're going when they understand that they're going to a trade war with this man, they're going to attack him where it hurts him most, his base, his votes, and go after people. I mean, why are they concentrating on agriculture, nuts, fish? And Donald Trump turned around and gave a $20 billion stimulus to a lot of farmers because it almost seems like he was prepared for this. Like, okay, here's the money. We're going to be in the middle of a trade war.
Do you know how dumb that is?
Well,
that's literally punching a hole in the bottom of your canoe.
Okay.
And then patching it and saying, "You're welcome."
No, it's saying I'm going to patch it for now.
I fixed your canoe.
As soon as we get to shore, I'm going to give you a bigger
hole
canoe.
in it. Dude, He literally inflicted it's a self-inflicted wound that he is now putting a Band-Aid on. And guess who pays for it twice? Us, the taxpayer, because your goods are going to go up in price from the farmers that have to, again, eat the cost.
Yes.
And the deficit just got $12 billion more added to it.
No,
what the F are we doing?
Well, I mean, if you read Jing Zhu, is that his name, Art of War, or who writes that book and whatnot, he talks about, you know, taking some stabs and taking some hits.
Sure.
And overcoming them. Once again, more bullets in the chamber for Donald Trump.
This is what Reaganomics has been saying for 30 years, is you didn't give it long enough. The Bush tax cuts, you didn't give it long enough. You got to give it longer. We're going to have to eat it on the front end. Do you know who's not going to eat it on the front end? Monsanto.
Yeah, I know.
Bayer.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to win-win. Again, they're going to pass on these costs. They are not going to have their share values affected. They don't care. So one more time, let's take a step back to the president.
Yeah.
Where you keep saying, I'm not going to pretend to know his master plan. In my opinion, he doesn't have one. He doesn't know what he's doing. His success is in branding himself. He is a celebrity. He responds to applause lines. He has no clue how international trade works. If it'd be a whole nother show to dive into his business history, which I would love to do, but nowhere in that did he demonstrate an acumen for real negotiating from a state to state level or even a business to business level. His rip roar strategy is crash and burn, and I'll sue you in the door and out the door.
Yeah.
He's been personally business engaged in 3,300 lawsuits.
Yeah, no, I know.
Every businessman gets sued a couple dozen times.
And honestly,
but
when you
over
look at the history,
3,000 lawsuits. His MO is not a good. He's been bankrupt 6 times, right? Again, we could go through all this.
I know.
But to suppose that he has a strategy, he does not.
Yeah.
Now, who does, right, are the people pouring the levers within the Treasury Department, but even that is questionable because Mnuchin seems to be on the reactionary end every time this news comes out.
Yeah.
So I don't even know where this master plan is coming from.
Yeah.
Now that Bannon's gone, right? But if he was still around, I'd be concerned it's coming from him, because when you look at the Bannon alt-right theology, it's that there's a globalist cartel, right, trying to devalue the dollar and take down America and blah, blah, blah. And so they might think by doing tariffs and economic isolationism, we will be stronger. But the truth of the matter, for us progressives, if we're serious about ripping down the military-industrial complex and we're serious about stopping the imperialism of the United States, we have to have economic allies around the world.
Yeah.
People do not give a rip what you think if they don't have any skin in the game with you.
Absolutely.
You can either put your foot on their head with a military, or you can negotiate with them peer-to-peer on a business relationship. So I'm all for increasing U.S. manufacturing and jobs.
Yeah.
But we're at full employment.
Yeah.
Jobs are not the problem. Wages are the problem.
Yeah.
And when it comes to manufacturing specifically, we have a 10 times greater threat with automation. When those jobs come home, even if the Chinese market, let's say they have their post-industrial revolution unionization, they're tired of jumping off the nets at Foxconn.
Yeah.
Right? Which they're kind of doing. The government will quash it, but they're trying.
Yeah.
And their wages become more, right?
Yeah.
There are other developing places all over the world that capitalism will go, that big corporations will go. If you want to bring those jobs home, do it through a union. Have local community support to buy here in America, manufactured in America. And we'll figure out if the market will bear the burden or not. I don't know if I'm willing to pay 23% more for an iPhone when they're already as expensive as they are.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, listen.
But let's find out.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that people talk about automation all the time, yet there's still more manufacturing jobs today than there were 10 years ago. There's still manufacturing jobs.
There's more people, but that's not.
Well, we have more products
Numbers
going around. I'm not still convinced that automation is going to take everything over right now. And there's a lot of other work to be done back at home over here. You know what I'm saying? And once again, like you said, creating economic allies is important. But to say that the system, the trade system, wasn't rigged against American workers, it's kind of hard to say that it wasn't. Because it was pretty bad.
We have different
now,
culprits.
You're saying there's a better solution, but, you know.
I think we think there's different culprits. And I'm not saying it's as binary as this, right? But I think you think it's the government and the trade deals. And what I'm telling you is it's the corporations.
Mm-hmm.
So you can rail against the international deal making.
Yeah.
But that's not where the problem is, in my personal opinion. It's a layer underneath that ironically we have more control over, because those are our companies mostly, right?
Yeah.
We're the largest economy in the world.
Absolutely.
We can affect this if we choose to.
So how can we go about doing that? How do we hold the corporations accountable right now? Is that another rabbit hole to go down to? If it's not the trade deals, and it's more the corporations, how do we fix that? What's the process of reining that in?
Oh man,
I know it's a tough question because it's probably because here's what I'm trying to figure out. If this is not the problem, this is the problem. This is what you're saying. It's not this, it's this. How do we fix this then? How do we go about that?
Well, I think to your point,
if a trade war isn't the answer,
right?
What is?
To your point, we could argue over identifying a problem, but let's try to identify a solution. So let's dive down the stoicism route and deal with the world as it is. Public banking.
Yep.
I mean, you saw me run on something that I still believe is an easy solution relative to American debt, right? We all have a ton of debt, whether it's student debt or healthcare debt or housing debt. We have a ton of debt, over $4 trillion just about now.
Yeah.
And we can all huff and puff about a 20 trillion national debt, but that's not the bill I get every month, right?
No.
The real bill you get every month is the cell phone and the healthcare and everything else that you're paying for. So we can unrig that a little bit by just giving Americans access to cut in line the way the institutions do. So they'll buy and sell your debt for pennies on the dollar without getting into the specifics. Our idea was just you get to cut in line anytime it changes hands and buy that. You went to medical school, you got 200 grand in debt, but you found out that one bank sold it to another bank and you owe this bank now.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet you that money changed hands for less than what you owe, right? Absolutely. Less than 200 grand. Wouldn't it be nice if you found out how much money it changed for and had an opportunity to take it off the table for that amount?
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, that money is going to be moving for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
So John Oliver bought $15 million worth of Texas healthcare debt for 60 grand.
Yeah, I know. It's
0.004%. So if you could get a letter from the bank that said your loan is moving from A to B, but it's moving for 10 grand instead of 80 grand like you owe.
Yeah.
Well, can I go down to the local bank, even though I don't have access to a ton of credit, and get a $10,000 loan and get that off the table and reduce my monthly
payment? If we had
payment?
Public banking, it would be a lot more
much easier
to get that.
And I said on the campaign trail, my wife's a teacher, so I have the benefit of being able to go into the Teachers Credit Union, which is better about access to capital for the middle class, right? Yeah. The big corporations, the Chases and the Wells Fargos, they have a lot less interest financially and risk-wise in giving you and I a couple 10 grand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we need to bring the banking back to local, so we can support local businesses, and you know what I mean? The underwriting that happens right now when the bank decides whether or not to give you a loan is so impersonal, right? It used to be the banker knew you from the community, knew what business you were going to do, and they had a sense of whether or not the business would do well.
Back in the day too, everybody's more personal in their jobs.
Of course, yeah,
like,
exactly.
Hey, Tommy, the beat cop, want me to get you an egg sandwich? A cup of coffee, and same thing with the banker. I'm going to go over and see Bill for a loan. And everybody knows who Bill is. Right. So I mean, we don't have that nowadays. So, I don't mean to interrupt you. So basically, when it comes to trade, when it comes to banking, it's still what Bernie Sanders said when he was campaigning. Mm-hmm. It's the corporations. They're running wild in every single aspect, and they're who we have to pay more attention. We have to pay more attention to them than we do trade policies or tax cuts or Reaganomics. It's them. It's really in them.
So this becomes the hardest part, but the part that we can control. And so this is back to where are the solutions? And the solutions are in us. I still believe that. I think the civil rights movement taught us that. I think there's a lot of different points in history that we can look to where no matter what you're up against in terms of immovable objects and governmental structures, there is a mechanism for the majority to work its way around. Mm-hmm. So I think we can do it with boycotts. We've seen that already a few different times.
Who should we boycott? Give us somebody to boycott, man.
No, dude.
You tell my people. You know my people.
You're not going to hear me give investment advice or for or against as a license. I'm still licensed. I still have a real job. Group.
Come on, you got to come. If you want us to boycott something, you got to come here with somebody to boycott.
No, that's the beauty of boycotts is they should be inspired by something organic and something not just me sitting here telling you who to pick and choose, right? I'm not a market maker either, right?
No, I hear you.
I don't want the government to be a market maker. I don't want to be a market maker. So I don't trust the government to run the economy, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't want the government picking and choosing who gets tariffs and who doesn't and not understanding the ramifications. I mean, they literally said that they did not expect reactionary tariffs.
No, come on.
Mnuchin is on the record saying they didn't expect other countries to react.
Mnuchin's just there to make sure the
but
vending
he's
machines
the
are
Treasury
full.
Secretary.
He's gonna make sure there's enough Doritos in the freaking thing.
Dude, don't
and
discount.
Diet Coke,
let's
Mnuchin.
Let's talk about Goldman Sachs.
Oh man, well I don't want to go back to Goldman Sachs. You know,
right.
Forget about it. All right, well, Kevin, we're out of time.
Oh my God.
You know what I'm saying, I want to thank you for coming on. Hopefully, we'll do more of this.
Sure.
And I want to thank you for joining us on the couch.
Yeah, buddy. Happy to be here.
Do you have a Twitter or a Facebook we can go?
Yeah, it's just my name, Kevin_Kensinger, Kensinger.
Not Kissinger.
Not Kissinger. No.
Oh, okay.
Everybody skips over the N. It's all right.
Well, thank you for joining us.
It wouldn't be so
on
bad
the
if
couch.
Kissinger wasn't such a horrible worker.
Well, he was. He was terrible and whatnot. And Hillary Clinton was praising him. Thank you very much, Kevin, for joining us on the couch.
Thanks, buddy.
My name is Pasta Jardula, and you're watching the Convo Couch. We'll see you soon.